call. Two men. One named Rich. That's me.
This is Jermaine. Just got off the toilet.
He's a foul man. This is the X's and O's of life.
Huh?
Yeah. So there is that. Now it's why I said, hey, this is what you're getting into. So this is another interview deal that we're doing here today. I decided yesterday, I think I'm going to split these podcasts up into making these interviews their own separate little podcast deals. So it just makes more sense for folks, but whatever. So I got Greg here, and he is, well, he messed up his ankle, and now he's like this health, I wouldn't say a health guru, but he's like, hey, move your body, not just the thing that hurts you, which is definitely an interesting thing because I think just generally as people, it's like, hey, my shoulder hurts. Let's do the guy thing and stretch it out and maneuver it in 14 different angles because that's going to make it feel good. No. So, let's kind of get into it here. So, tell the folks who you are, what you do, what happened, and kind of just tell your story.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Greg. I'm from Montreal, so up in Canada. Yes, sir. And as you mentioned, I had a very pivotal moment in my life happen 10 years ago where I sprained my ankle playing flag football. And it was an innocent ankle sprain that just never healed properly. So I had injured myself. I was always a rambunctious kid, breaking bones and always having these big acute injuries, but they would always heal. And I would have taken those big acute injuries over this minor ankle sprain any day of the week because this ended up developing into a chronic issue that just never healed properly. So I continued to play football that season as a quarterback. I could just catch and throw in this league. And you're 19, so I'm 29 now. At the age of 19, I just wanted to play football, and I got along, and we actually won the season. But after the season was over, I started doing physiotherapy, and it just wasn't getting any better. And it kept lingering and lingering. And this was a year, two and a half years later. And I was trying all sorts of different solutions at the time, and nothing seemed to be working. And it wasn't this excruciating pain, but it was like a 4 out of 5 out of 10 constant buzzing pain that I was feeling. And being someone who was super active before, my spirits were definitely down, and I was just like, what am I going to do? I constantly feel this pain. And eventually I ended up getting surgery from a surgeon out of Toronto. But that actually just started even more problems because after the surgery, I ended up getting back pain, hip pain, and I just felt broken and unbalanced and just in constant agony and just didn't feel right in my body. And it was only until I started to take a deep dive and not just listen to what the classic physiotherapy advice or physical therapy in the US advice was giving me, but started to take a deep dive and look at different mentorships and workshops and what are the alternative points of view that were being taught outside the confines of institutionalized education. And I start to make progress. And I could fast forward the story, but essentially now I own my own clinic called From the Ground Up Physiotherapy. So we got our little foot logo here.
Nice.
I'm all about getting to the root cause of the problem. So when we think about the traditional therapies, oftentimes when someone has a pain, they'll go to massage, a chiro, a physical therapist, and the expectation is like that individual, that therapist is there to fix you. And so you're going to lie on a table like a limp fish, and they're going to, massage and manipulate you, and like the pain is going to go away. Now, although that sounds nice and idealistic that like you could just do nothing and they'll be the ones to fix you, unfortunately, if we just focus on the site of pain, while it might feel temporary relief to get, let's say, your knee rubbed out if you're having knee pain, the moment you stand up, you revert back to the old movement patterns that got you in trouble in the first place, and the pain comes back. Now, of course, people can understand the idea that they need to do exercise, but oftentimes the exercises that are prescribed in these settings are very isolated in nature and they don't really mimic the demands of our real life. So if you have a shoulder problem, they'll just do like, banded exercises or whatever it is, but we're often not looking holistically at the whole body. For example, a shoulder could be like, let's look at what's happening with your breathing, your rib cage, your neck. And so, it took me a long time to figure out my own issues, but now I'm at a point where I don't have any pain on a day-to-day basis. I could go slacklining, so I'm walking on a tightrope. I go on hikes barefoot, and this is after I couldn't do more than 10 seconds of barefoot standing just statically. So a long journey of progress and self-exploration has got me to a point where it was a lot of pursuit of how can I fix myself. And as I gain more tools and knowledge along the way, I now share my knowledge with my clients and the world abroad through different the internet and the socials and all that good stuff.
So, I mean, long story short, I mean, you developed a, well, for lack of a better term, a clinic because of the ineptitude of the actual healthcare system.
More or less, I knew that as soon as I graduated, I couldn't work under the confines of traditional physical therapy clinics, which are like you come in, you often get a heating pad, then they'll put like electrodes on you that buzz your muscles, they'll massage you, and then like maybe exercise is given as an afterthought. And that's, I'm not going to say that's everywhere, but it's a large majority, and that's what was given to me, no matter where I went to many different clinics. And I needed a model that would be like, all right, like basically I'm a glorified personal trainer that focuses on the fine tuning of movement to get things working well. And when I give someone their ownership of their body and I teach them how to work, holy crap, their legs start vibrating like crazy because the nervous system gets challenged. And we're making system changes rather than these temporary, tiny fixes that the pain comes back a few days later because you didn't really get after why the problem is there in the first place.
That's, yeah, I mean, that look, you think about it, I mean, if you don't really attack the root of it and then have like almost like an equity attributed to it, yeah, you're going to get that instant gratification, which is cool and great until, and that's kind of how like chiropractors are a bit of a scam because, yeah, let's crack you up and adjust you and not really going to tell you what to do to, like, aid in your posture or aid in, whatever, X, Y, and Z. Exactly. We'll see your simple self in a few days because they're like, hey, you need to come here 3 times a week. I'm like, what kind of doctor do you have to go to 3 times a week unless you got like reconstructive surgery and this is like PT?
Well, because often what they'll do is they'll take an X-ray of someone's body and then think about what a perfect posture is meant to be, and so they'll like show you your perfect posture. Let's say 2 months later after they've cracked you into this perfect alignment. But unless your muscles know how to hold that perfect alignment, and to be honest, there is no such thing as a perfect alignment. The idea is that like we're meant, like our spines often, we many times when people go to the gym, they'll do planks and core exercises where they're trying to squeeze and like not move. But when you think about walking, right, this idea that the head moves over, like think about a dog walking. They have this nice swagger in their movement. That's how our spine should move. So we don't want to brace and core tight all the time and squeeze your glutes, squeeze your abs, and all the things that you hear in the gym. Like even the word posture is a very dirty word. And I'll kind of explain what I mean by that. Like
I purposely brought that word up because I was like, I'll just throw it out to him and see what he says.
That's great. So, the word posture, when I even say the word posture to most people, what happens? You'll start seeing someone stand up a little taller,
right? Like, you mean this thing,
back and whatnot. And what I invite the audience to do is like take their hands and squeeze them together really, really hard. So you're going to squeeze your hands for like 5-10 seconds. Now I'm going to say, okay, I want you to squeeze your hands together for the next 12 hours. Like, no, I don't want to do that.
Right.
Well, now put your hands in your lower back and go into chest up mode and feel what happens to those low back muscles. They're tight. They're squeezed. Well, if your hands don't want to get squeezed for more than a few seconds, well, why does your lower back want to get squeezed?
Interesting.
So when we start to look at many cultures around the world, I was in India in 2014, so way back, I saw people able to do a deep, acid grass squat with their lower back completely rounded and relaxed. And when we look at that posture of someone at 80 years old, they're able to do that. Most 20-year-olds in North America, Canada, US, you name it, Europe, whatever, most
Right.
people can't do like comfortably sit in a deep squat. But what's happening in a deep squat? This is the natural resting posture of the human body. So for hundreds of thousands of years, sitting around a campfire, we were able to sit in this deep squat position, right? The low back is relaxed in there. But now all of a sudden I go and sit up and I pop my chest up. Well, that's not congruent with the natural resting posture of a deep squat, which is to be a back that's relaxed. So when we're all sitting in what we deem to be good posture, and I put that in quotation marks, we're just creating tension all day. And so then when we get up from sitting, we're like, why does my back hurt? Well,
You're just like, oh, Jesus. Good.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're exuding tension all day long, and it's not what our body wants. We want to be relaxed. So that's where this idea of like good posture is such a misnomer, because 100 people out of 100 people think about, all right, I got to be like a soldier. But think about, so I have a little quote of Conor McGregor in the background.
Yeah, I saw that.
Whether you like him or hate him, and you look at all fighters, are they standing with their chest up while they're fighting, or are they nice and relaxed?
Right, you're fluid.
They're fluid, exactly. So fluidity is key. It's not fluidity and tension are on the opposite ends of the spectrum, right? So we want to learn how to move like a dog, or animals, which have this primal, beautiful way of moving about them. So we kind of unlearn how to move well when we start to think about teaching children that they should never slouch, and teaching people in the gym to always brace their spine. So these are kind of concepts that I discuss, and then, obviously go through with my clients so they can start to unlearn a lot of these kind of, inherited misconceptions about the way we're supposed to carry our body in society.
I mean, you think about it, right? Like, how many times, and it's the weird analogy, but how many times over the years have you heard eggs are good for you, then they're bad, then they're good, then they're bad?
Mm-hmm.
This is seemingly one of those things that has been written by the gods, that posture is supposed to be posture, because posture. Why? Because posture, damn it.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
Okay, I guess. But, I mean, I'm a big sports guy, right? So, with the whole fluidity, you think about baseball, right? I don't know if you're a baseball fan at all. You have the guy up there. He's at bat. He's not tight. He's, you can see him just always kind of tweaking, doing a little something, just keeping that movement going, because it's the whole general like physics thing. Like, I mean, I'm gonna misquote it because I'm an idiot, but it's the whole a body that is not in motion, or no, a body that stays in motion. Wait, oh Christ! You know what the hell?
Inertia, basically. So it's something.
There you go. Told you I'm an idiot.
Static, like a big boulder. It's not going to move unless there's a force applied on it. And something that's moving will keep moving unless there's a force that acts upon it. So yeah, like the idea of that baseball player keeping fluid is that he's going to keep moving rather than just have to exude a lot of energy to go from stop to start, or from stop. Yeah, exactly. Anyhow.
And I mean, just for now, I'm the teacher here. Anyone that is kind of sitting at home, just kind of act as though that you're going to swing a bat, but make your shoulders, make your arms tight, and just feel how that feels, and see how quick you can move. You're not going to be able to be quick, but if you sit there loose, you're wow, that's simple. So that's the crazy thing, right? Like, because it really is like a simple concept. It's not some kind of rocket science 30 years in the lab to kind of test theories. It's like, oh wait, you mean if you're not tight, you may feel better, because when you hurt, you're usually tight. So you're saying if I make myself tight, I won't be tight. The logic doesn't check out.
The word is permission, because oftentimes what I need to do is give someone permission to relax their body, because they have been so deeply ingrained that they need to keep this tension to protect their spine or whatever it might be. But just see how children play. Like, always the best example is going to see children play. They're springy, they're loose, and they let their body just move in a fluid manner. But like, then we start to learn certain habits, and that's when things go awry.
It's funny because wife has this little like it's like a little posture backpack looking weird thing, and she never uses it, and she's always kind of like, oh, I'm sore and I'm tight. I'm like, well, use your posture thing. Now I'm going to say, hey, let's burn that thing.
Yeah,
Um,
go slouch like monkeys, basically.
and so I mean, what is the reaction that you get from your client? I mean, obviously people are going to research you before they jump
Mhm.
into bed there, but when you're like, hey, forget everything else you heard.
Yeah.
What is their initial like? Whoa, what now?
Well, I think when people are in pain, they're vulnerable and they're open to receiving, right? So that's like, all right, well, humor me for a second, and then I like easily feel the difference. And I'm not saying inherently like the ability to extend your spine is a bad thing, but it more so often like when people touch their toes, like in the yoga world, we're always saying, all right, like keep your back straight when you bend down to touch your toes. But if you lean back, your spine should extend. So when you lean forward, your spine should flex. So it's just the ability to access both ends of the spectrum. But yes, like I am in myth busting mode many times over because, when it comes to backs, I'll discuss this idea of like exploring movement. For example, when it comes to feet, we've all been told like, all right, we need our support and we need to make sure that our feet are never flat. But like, let's go and look at the example of LeBron James, Usain Bolt. Like many people who are very athletic, their feet are very flat. So it's not about the foot being one shape or another. It's the ability for the foot to access the ability to flatten and the ability to arch, just the way that the spine should do its thing as well. So I think people are open to receiving, and it's all about feeling is believing. So the moment I get them to do things, they're like, oh
Mm-hmm.
wow, I don't feel my back and I feel my legs working. Like, okay, so like the buy-in has to not just be intellectual; it also has to be feeling, right? So I can't talk about movement and get you better. I have to obviously teach it and integrate it into your body so you start to kind of feel the differences.
And I would assume everything with this is still subjective as it would be with conventional kind of medicinal things where, everyone's body is going to be different. Some people are going to be a little bit more, you know, fluid and agile and all that fun stuff. So, okay. Huh. So what's like your coolest success story with that? Like the person that came in that was like, I haven't done X and X and X for this number of years. Saw you for X number of times. Now I'm, doing whatever.
Well, I have like fortunately and very rewardingly, I have had like many times over people with chronic pain issues for years and years, and they go to see the houses and try everything, and then they finally come to me, and within a few sessions, like we're making significant impact. So I had this one guy in his 30s, like 35, but he had been indoctrinated to believe that like he can never flex his spine. And so again, the words of a doctor are very powerful in this hierarchical relationship of like, I'm up here and you're down here. Like if I say to you, like never flex your spine is damaging, and your mindset like believes that, well, we create these very, the idea of I'm sure you've heard the word placebo, but the
Right.
idea of a nocebo is basically saying like, it's causing a harmful effect. So my words cause a harmful effect on what's going on, rather than like, the pill that makes you have a positive effect. So anyhow, um, this guy for 6 years has had chronic back pain, and he had to like bend down where he bends his knees and he keeps his back straight. And I
Mm.
started to teach him, okay, we could flex, we could relax. And, I texted him, not in the last few months, but I had seen him like early on when I started my clinic like 3.5 years ago, and he's still doing great. And it's
Yeah.
just within 6 weeks or something, after 6 years of chronic pain issues, you know, going to see so many different individuals, and now he's able to finally like just bend down to tie his shoes and use his body without having to be so conscious. Because when we get up in our heads and we need to control everything, we become robotic. That comes back to this idea of fluidity. We have the robotic side of things and the fluidity side of things. My goal is to help people get out of their heads and more into their bodies and start to use them in a way that's more natural.
Have you got any like backlash from like conventional, you know, medicinal people? They're like, this guy's a quack. He's just trying to sell his thing or
To be honest, not really. I mean, I'm like
nice.
isolated in my world in the sense that like, people coming in on my clinic and people start talking about the positive impacts, and I just keep seeing more and more people in that sense. And I'm not like too related to the doctor world, I guess. Like I don't necessarily rely on doctors to refer me that many clients. Like word of mouth does its thing. But I do. Oftentimes I am going against the advice of podiatrists, for example. So I had been in orthotics for 5 years myself. And what I would just say about orthotics for anyone who has orthotics right now, your orthotic is not a bad thing, but we'll just ask ourselves the question. If you had neck pain and you went to go see someone and they gave you a neck brace that like didn't let your neck move, would you expect to get better? Probably not, right?
Unless it was broken and trying to keep it in place, then yeah, but
Exactly.
yeah.
So the idea is after a car accident, you would want yourself to be immobilized, but that would be a temporary thing with eventually the idea being that you need to reintroduce movements, you need to reintroduce strength, etc. But when it comes to our feet, we basically just assume that the foot is like a static thing that cannot get better. But if we understand that the foot is supposed to flatten and now we're taking orthotic and we're blocking that movement from taking place, 26 bones in each foot. Okay, so we have 25% of our bones of our entire body are located in our feet.
No
And now
shit,
we're saying,
really?
do not move them. Well,
Huh.
what's going to happen is the knees are going to start to take on more load. Your back is going to start to take on load.
You overcompensate.
We overcompensate in some sort of way. So what I do with my clients, and I've helped many, many people get out of orthotics and start to get out of foot pain by teaching their feet to how to flatten, how to re-arch, how to get your body stacked on top of your feet. And so that's like a thing where podiatrists will often say, okay, like, if you have a hammer, you're going to use a hammer. And it's not that they're inherently bad people. It's just that's the methods that they were taught for many years. So you get very deeply indoctrinated in one viewpoint, but I invite people to open up their minds like, well, that makes sense. And we have to use this like first principles. If something doesn't move, it's going to get stiff. If something doesn't move, it's also going to get weaker, like a cast, right? Like if you're
you think about it, right? You get a headache, because I get headaches all the time, man. My body is fucked. So I get headaches all the time. And seemingly it kind of stems from kind of the neck and kind of the shoulders. And you feel it physically tight. So, going on the ideology of not moving it, keeping it static, that does, you're told, hey, kind of stretch it out, kind of just do, whatever you're doing, yada, 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 to kind of work it out. But, you have the, not you, but, conventional popular medicine is saying, no, keep it relaxed, do that. I'm like, well, how is, if you were supposed to work something that's tight out, how does relaxing it or just letting it sit there in a static position, how does that do anything?
No,
that just doesn't make sense.
And realize that, like, again, in many other cultures around the world, like, one of the worst things that happened at one point was like you had a back injury. It was all about, bed rest. And then they realized that was the wrong thing. So just realize that it's, everything's on an evolution. And just unfortunately, like for me, one of the missions that I like keeps calling to me more and more is like, I need to help change the education system, because this is what I was taught in school. And basically I would have done what I was taught in school if it worked, but it didn't work for myself.
That's the thing.
So it's all about like, N of one. I was my own little test population, and I was trying the things that I was being taught, and I was receiving that type of treatment when it came to my own problems, and it wasn't really working. And it was only like I found some amazing mentorships out of the UK. I was doing virtual stuff online, and I just found the right mentors, and I was very fortunate in that way. And it changed my mind in the way I think, and I approached the body, and then it just like kept going down more rabbit holes. And now, just developing my own type of system where I could assess clearly what's going on in someone's body. Where are they avoiding movement? How are their injury history like impacting their current body? Because that's also a big thing. Like your back pain could be a result of like an ankle injury that happened 10 years ago.
Right.
And the fact that you're like avoiding and your body, develops new strategies to get on with life. But we have to consider things that have happened in your life as potential for, what's currently going on.
Right. And that makes perfect sense. I mean, you have an upper back problem. Does that mean it's from your upper back? No, it very well could be stemming from, those little like twigs that you're walking around on all day, because everything should be aligned. Like you have your spine, it goes from your noggin down to your ass. So it's like, I mean, but it's funny because you have the conventional medicine ideology in your head, but then you have your own kind of logic. It's like, well, my back hurts, so it has to be coming from my back, right? It's like, maybe.
Yeah.
So, I mean, let's delve into the celebrity life here. Have you dealt with, any athletes, any celebrities came through your clinic or?
I work with a bunch of different wrestlers. That's like been my athletic populations and ballerinas actually.
Really?
No, yeah, a lot of because they're constantly on their points of their toes,
Right.
and so they need these few ladies that I worked with like definitely needed to learn how to access the middle of their foot because they were always pointed up there. Wrestling obviously is a super aggressive sport, so just I'm not going to change what happens in their sport, but the whole idea is, can I give you access to more of your body so it shows up to your wrestling match? And just mainly what ends up coming into my door is just gen pop. So, moms pops, lots of young people in their 20s, 30s, 40s. I work up all the way up to, 87 has been my oldest client.
See, that's pretty cool that you got the younger kiddos coming through there because kids are stupid and stubborn. And but they're also like but they're also kind of into the quote unquote new age kind of thing. So it's kind of like, yeah, you're stupid and stubborn, but this is the new age stuff that really like gets you a tingle. So what do you think? And I think really you're probably you're harder to convince people are like the 50, 60-year-olds that have had that ingrained.
For sure.
Well, my doctor said this and I've been doing it for the last 20 years. Exactly. Really? So why's your back still fucked up?
Exactly.
Because you keep going to the same place and doing the same thing.
Yeah.
At one point where you're going to maybe kind of jump aboard and say, hey, maybe this other thing could be something better because I don't know. I've been lying on like you said, a limp fish on a table for 3 times a week for the last 20 years. Yeah. And for some strange reason, my back still hurts.
Well, it's the temporary relief treadmill, basically, this idea that I keep getting a bit of a relief, and for sure you don't but pain is an important teacher, and it's gonna keep coming back until we try something else. So
it's funny. I'm at the age because I'm 37 and the wife is 37 probably too. And we're at the point where we're now giving each other what's the word? Let's just, for lack of a better term, useful gifts. They're not like the fun, sexy gifts. Literally, the best thing she ever got me from a gift was last Christmas, and you probably heard of it. That it's that chirp wheel.
I don't think so, actually.
Oh, dude, look up chirp wheel.
Okay.
It is literally just it's a plastic wheel with kind of a rubber soft casing mold with a little indent down the middle that your spine would fit into. And it's about 4 or 5 different, and I guarantee you probably have something at the clinic that resembles this. Is something else. And you kind of sit in front of it and you lean back on it on your back, and it stretches you out and cracks you up and all that. And it is literally the best thing I've ever had because it is, it will crack your back and do that other stuff, but it almost like is like a pseudo little massage, but it extends your muscles. It is glorious. So I'm willing to bet you probably have something like that in there.
Yeah, for sure.
I
know what you're getting after.
Yeah. Nice. Super good. Not a sponsor, but dude, please sponsor me. My God. Unfortunately, the wife left the one on vacation, the real good one. So there is a divorce pending. So it's fine. So I saw something here too, where you said something about hiking barefoot.
Yes.
That you would suggest people to do that. Now, I do have a caveat. I do have diabetes. Okay. So, I'm sure that you know the ins and outs of that to a degree and all that. And your feet are very, very sacred when it comes to that. So obviously those folks that would fall under that veil would not really be able to do that with the safety of, losing a foot. Nobody wants to be a pirate unless you really, really want to be a pirate. So, I'm assuming that kind of, backpacks off of the, not being flat, or it's okay being flat-footed and just kind of letting your foot kind of do its thing when it's not having some orthopedic kind of situation there. So kind of just delve into that a little bit if you,
For sure.
you don't mind.
Absolutely. So let's just think about it this way. Your feet are a sensor. Your eyes are a sensor. So when we go about being in the sunlight, we don't put blindfolds on our feet, on our eyes. We wear sunglasses. Now, most shoes, when we start to think about Air Max or Adidas Boost, or you name your fancy Hoka shoe that has like 3 inches of foam between you and the ground. Well, what you're doing is you're dampening the signal that your feet should perceive from the ground, right? Because when you put a lot of cushioning between us and the ground, all those nerve endings, so we have as many nerve endings on our feet as we do in our hands. And our hands are touching things all day long. You have your fine motor skills, but imagine you wore rubber gloves on your hands, like you would all the time.
It's like wearing mittens.
Pardon me?
It's like wearing mittens.
Exactly. We wouldn't perceive things the same way, and our hands would become very sensitive. So what I often say to people is like, imagine being in a movie theater in the middle of the day. And so you spent the last 2 hours in the dark. And then you go outside and all of a sudden your eyes are like, whoa, lots of sunlight. Yep. Well, that's kind of what happens to many people's feet that exist inside cushion footwear all the time. So we are all walking on cushions, and then we wear, we walk on hardwood floor, concrete, and cement. So everything is flat and everything is even. Now, evolution. We have been walking barefoot for hundreds of thousands of years, and our feet adapted to walk on uneven terrain, to walk on rocks, to walk on the soil, to walk on roots, to feel and perceive the ground. But the thing is, for our entire lives, we're told like, don't, wear shoes every time you go into the backyard or in the park or whatever it might be. But we inherently know, we want to be on the beach. We want to feel our feet on the ground.
Right.
People will walk like on rocks when they're on the beach, and they like kind of freak out. Now, if we go to another part of the world, no problem walking on all that type of texture, right? So a hike is the same thing that I'll talk about diabetes in a second because I want to mention that point. But the whole idea of here when it comes to like hiking barefoot, we could go slowly, but I led a group of 25 students on a barefoot hike, and none of them ever did it before, and everyone survived the hour and a half that we did. And it was you just become more mindful of your steps. You pay attention. You become more in tune. Because think about a big, clunky hiking boot. If you hit one bad rock, boom, you're going to sprain your ankle.
Yeah.
Your foot has, like I mentioned, those 26 bones, 33 joints that are meant to adapt to that uneven terrain. But now when they're locked in place, they can't do their job the same way.
Always comes back to the whole static thing. Interesting.
So the bones are meant to move and yield to the ground. That's what foot flattening is. It's absorption. So your foot is in propulsion mode as you push off, then you take your next step and then flattens out again. And then it becomes stiff again, and then it flattens. And so hiking barefoot is just this very interesting thing of like you walk on the moss and oh, that feels nice in my feet. Oh, let me walk in this muddy stuff. And so your feet start to become alive again, those nerve endings. Like everyone who comes into my clinic, they'll lie on their table. I'm going to look at like all their movements, but I'll take a little like pen and I'll just swipe the bottom of their foot and see how reactive their foot is. And for people that spend time barefoot, their foot just is chill. But for those that like are so like unaccustomed to being barefoot, their foot literally jumps back like crazy. Now imagine what their foot is doing all the time. It's never comfortable just being on the ground. It kind of is always like jumping.
Right.
They're not. So it's just a very enriching experience to try. Even just walk in the park barefoot for now. Like if you're not going on a hike, and you'll feel, you'll just feel. Like that's exactly what it is. The whole idea is your feet are meant to feel the ground and not be dampened by the hokas that you've been, living in for the last, however many years.
Yeah, I mean, I generally wear sandals all year round, even though I live in the Northeast, so it doesn't really make too much sense. But it's funny because the wife just grabbed these other sandals that were on clearance. They're literally right in front of me, actually. And these ones that I have on are Adidas, not a sponsor. They have like a softer kind of padding, a foam padding to them.
Mm-hmm.
And the ones that she got, it's very hard. And it was like just a shock to the system. Like, I don't even want these things. I feel like I'm not able to really move.
Yeah.
These ones that I have now, I've had them for 2 years. They smell terrible. It is what it is. And, but like it feels like my foot has more of a for lack of a better term, of fluidity to it. This thing, it just felt like a brick, like you're just walking on just a hard piece of a less hard thing of whatever you're stepping on right now. So,
yeah.
Hmm.
So the other point to make just about diabetes, for example, is like, again, I don't know if you have type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes. So one generally related, that's more related to, lifestyle, and oftentimes like, sugar and blood sugar control management is a big thing, because type 2 diabetes can be reversed through lifestyle factors. All that to say is that, yes, people's feet can become a bit more, you have a neuropathy, or you feel less.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've had clients come to me with foot numbness where they went to their doctor and like, what do I do?
That's where I was going with this, by the way.
So I had a client. So think about so I'm Jewish, and a rabbi's wife was seeing me. Okay. And this rabbi's wife, think about, generally, they're going to be more modest. They're going to always like never show their feet. And even in the house, wear socks and whatnot. And I said, I don't know if this is going to work, but let's get your feet naked. Okay. So let's start to stimulate your feet. So I have all these like spiky tools in my clinic where I get people walking on this. Within 3 weeks, after dealing with 3 years of foot numbness, it went away. Just by use it or lose it principle. So again, it's about graded exposure. I'm not going to go and, kill you right away, but I do need to start awakening these nerve endings that are like kind of dying because they're just not getting the stimulation. So even though you might be sensitive, you kind of need to go into that sensitivity, but in a graded exposure manner, to start to, awaken these nerve endings.
Wow, that's super. I bet pharmaceutical people are like, dude, shut up. This is where we're making our money.
Kind of the way it works. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, yeah, look, not for nothing. Yeah, I have that. I have a little bit of neuropathy as well.
So kick off your shoes, go into the backyard, start to walk barefoot. There's not glass everywhere in the world like people think. You're like, there's glass somewhere. Like, glass isn't just everywhere.
Right. It's not just sitting in your backyard it doesn't grow. It's not a flower.
Exactly.
That's funny. Yeah, you're giving me ideas here.
Yeah. So, there's lots of dirty myths, the posture, not letting your spine flex, letting your feet actually feel. Because oftentimes people are told, like, wear shoes in your house. It's like, are we literally thinking that we were born with our feet flawed and that they don't know how to do what they need to do? The problem is, at a very young age, we start to immediately put children into these shoes that don't let them feel, that are too narrow at the toe box, that have no flexibility in them. So like the shoes that I wear are much more natural in nature. They're wider toe box, they're flat, they're flexible, they're thin, so I can feel the ground, I can move my feet. And so if we always allow the feet to do their thing from a young age, then we don't have to reverse what we've done to our feet our whole life. So, it's just about going back to this kind of more primal, ancestral way of just thinking about the body, rather than thinking we're flawed and we need all this fancy technology to always fix us.
So less is more, kind of same situation. I mean, there's a funny little analogy, and it's something I rarely throw out, but just how you verbalize that made me kind of think of this. So, Chipotle, they only hire people that have never worked in the fast food industry because they don't want to spend the time to reverse bad habits. So, I mean, you're just saying, hey, essentially, look, get foot naked and, just kind of let because you're right. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, if you don't, lose it or lose it, or use it or lose it type of thing. Like, if you can't feel this stuff, and you're right, like if you go over anything, that's kind of how people were able to kind of do the walk on cool thing a little bit. I mean, there's some like magic stuff there and whatever, but it's like, if you're used to having your body kind of exposed to things, it's not like a shock to the system.
Yeah.
But if you,
basically, the one thing I'll say is, like, I have to caveat things with, like, now where people are at is important to like go slowly with these things, like go barefoot. Then there's all these types of if people type of like natural footwear, they'll see, I make all sorts of recommendations about a lot of brands that most people don't know about. So like, not Asics, New Balance, Nikes, Brooks, whatever people think about it. It's these other brands that are much more on the fringe that most people are not aware of, that have these more the principles I'm talking about, the wide toe box, they're more thin, they're more flat, they're more flexible. But the idea is oftentimes it's not just about changing the shoe at a certain point. You want to do certain exercises that facilitate that transition to more of this natural, okay, I actually have to use the muscles of my foot. But if you take it slowly and you work on, developing new awareness and consciousness in your feet, then it goes a long way. And then, hey, my back pain has actually gone away because my feet are actually more alive. My knees feel better, So it's about taking it slowly, depending on certainly where you're at and how long you've been reliant on whatever, those maximalist, like very supportive footwear.
So if someone wants to kind of break their trend, for lack of a better term, and kind of start, going the holistic kind of, what advice would you kind of have for them to kind of have them break that cycle?
Well, certainly kick off their shoes, take it slowly, start to give themselves permission to relax. See if they could spend some more time in a deep squat. If they need to elevate their heels, they'll get their back relaxing a little bit more. So like imagine like being on a ramp where your heel's on the higher part, and then like go and see if you could give yourself a hug there. When you sit, don't sit upright like crazy anymore. Sigh, allow the ribs to come down more. Give yourself permission to relax. Now, of course, like being guided by a professional can obviously be helpful. And what
Like
I've done,
yourself?
yeah, more or less myself. One of the things I've been frustrated by is hearing the same thing over and over again. I tried this, and this, and it didn't help. And of course, in my head, I'm like, of course that didn't help because none of that mimics the demands of your real life. You want to go back to playing, you want to go back to running, but all you did was table exercises or got your knee massaged out, but then you went back to running and it came back. So people often think like time is just going to heal me. And although time is important sometimes, at the end of the day, if you go back to running with the same body that got you in trouble in the first place, nothing's going to change. So what I've done is I packaged together an online program doing the exact same things that I do with my clients in my clinic with the aim of, developing independence on your own. So very simple routines of simple doesn't mean not effective though. It's like a very unique type of exercise that I've put together and the things that I do with my clients to help people get out of pain. So it's certainly helpful, to have a guide on your journey, but no one's there to take the responsibility for you. That's what I always say to people. It's like, I'm not going to fix you when people come in, you got to fix me. It's like, I'm not here to be your fixer. I'm here to be your
Right.
guide and kind of show you the steps you need to take. Of course, guide you along the way with educating you how to move differently and like being hands-on in the sense of like putting in the right positions. But regardless, I've had a lot of success with people following these programs that are meant to teach your whole body to work as a unit rather than that site of pain always taking on all that load. And that's the pain is just a call for help. And so we don't want to kill the pain with painkillers. We want to listen to that pain and realize that site is just being overloaded and we need to get everything to the party rather than just that area overworking.
Yeah, I mean, it's the idea of like, oh man, I woke up and I'm all sore. What happened? I must have slept wrong. It's like, okay, I mean, did you, or is this like an extension of,
Exactly.
The previous 20 years that you've just lived like an idiot and just followed the book of the law, and now you're like, And it's funny, this whole conversation, I've been like moving around. I'm like, get out of my head, you wizard. What are you doing?
Yeah, it's getting into the feels.
So obviously you're up in the Great White North, so it's a little more difficult to saunter out over there. So you said you have an online situation going on. So tell the folks about that.
Yeah. So, like the easiest place to find like all my information would just be Ground Up Physio. So Ground Up and then Physio's PHYSIO and on Instagram and Facebook. And then all the links are there. But the name of the program is Rebuild Your Body from the Ground Up. This idea of that our feet are our foundation. And so everything that I teach is about relating back to the way that we walk. So for example, a very simple thing that most people have done a glute bridge in their life where they're lying on their back and they like lift up their butts.
Right.
Now, if someone does that, after listening to this and they push their heels. That's what most people do. But when we actually walk and we extend our hip, we actually push to the forefeet. And all of a sudden that tiny change of push from your heel to your forefoot, like, oh my God, my legs cramp up like crazy. So it's these little, the devil's in the details when it comes to good movement and understanding that like where we should pressurize our feet makes a big difference in terms of how things load in our body and connecting the foot to the calf, the hamstring, the quad, the butt to work together, instead of always like you're weak and you have back pain, you need to strengthen your glutes. And that's like the generic advice that's usually given: glutes, 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 glutes. But it's not just about one body part, it's about connecting the body together.
I actually do have a question here real quick, because one thing I've noticed for my whole life is I don't really ever let my heel touch the ground. I'm always kind of walking on my, let's just call it the top part of my foot.
Yeah, the ball of the foot.
Yeah. So it's always been a weird thing. I don't really understand why, but one, it does seem to, I'm a lot quieter than most. Would in your opinion here, I'm not saying people need to go out and overtly try that, but is that good, bad, or indifferent?
Well, when it comes to walking versus running versus jogging versus sprinting, normally what will happen with walking is like a heel, midfoot, toe. With jogging, you want to hit your midfoot, and then with sprinting, it's going to be much more the ball of the foot.
Right.
So I don't want to like diagnose is it good or bad, but more so like the heel should hit the ground. But the thing is, what happens to most people is because they don't know how to, their foot doesn't flatten well. It's kind of heel toe, and for you, you're just kind of living.
Yeah,
toe, so
I'm like tiptoeing everywhere, and it's super weird. It's super comfortable,
and it does create a bit of tension in the lower half, right? So we need to learn probably how to yield to the ground better, so that you're able to absorb that impact a bit more through the whole foot. It's a very common pattern sometimes with children, like they're walking on their tiptoes and they never learn how to get out of that. But it's often because
so it is common a little bit then. Okay,
it's definitely common for sure. But something that I would, with certain exercises in my program, like I teach someone to keep their heel heavy and then learn how to flatten out that foot. So different things that might be worthwhile looking and exploring into.
Because it is interesting. Sometimes you hear like I'll be downstairs and I'm like, kid, stop. What are you doing? Yeah, Jesus. No. And it's like, do you just walk on your heels? And it's very interesting, when you really kind of think about that stuff. Because who's really thinking about how people walk? That's like a sociopath thing to like. Well, yeah.
I'm at the park looking at how everyone's interesting to see what happens in people's bodies.
Yeah, if you have an accountant sitting here staring at people's, how they walk, it's like, yeah, you kind of you got a foot thing, don't you? Yeah, you do.
But it's funny because in school there's so many useless things we learn about. We don't really learn about our own bodies, which is a crime. I think that physical education is not like, we should be learning about our body throughout our entire lives, but we kind of dissociate that, or we say like, only if you're going into health sciences. But why don't we learn about our bodies more? And yeah.
I think because they don't have people like you teaching them. It's a bit of a ringing endorsement, but it's also like the reality of it. If you have the conventional medicine part of it, it's like, hey, your knee goes this way and then that way. And, it's just really kind of bare bones, pun intended, but like, you don't have the unconventional, which, I would consider this probably being unconventional, even though it makes more sense than the other. But in the grand scheme of life, it's considered unconventional, and that's kind of like a no word.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's that hippie stuff. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
Oh, you mean just walking like a person? Yeah. How dare them dirty hippies?
Amen to that. That's for sure.
It's silly. Because honest to God, just having this hour-long conversation has really made me think like, wow, I get headaches. I get, sometimes my back is tight. Could it be from that? Maybe. Could it be about how I'm actually handling day-to-day life? More than likely.
Yeah.
So, I'm not for nothing since that stupid wife of mine lost the good chirp wheel. My back has been tighter. This divorce needs to really kind of get moving. Anyway, but yeah, it's just very, very interesting. And for being a diabetic here, having the opportunity to kind of really think about having neuropathy a little bit differently and saying, okay, hey, kind of train your foot a little bit. Like I don't really have any other way to put it, but you're just retraining your foot to feel things. Because seemingly it doesn't really get better by doing nothing with it if you're super, super careful with it, which obviously you should be. You shouldn't, sit here
Graded
and
exposure, right?
right. Like, don't just sit here and start stepping on spikes like an idiot. But
I do. Funny enough, that girl that I was talking about, the rabbi's wife that I helped,
yeah.
If you type it on Amazon, an acupressure mat, and it is a spiky mat essentially, but I wouldn't necessarily stand on it, but I would just like put it on the floor and then you could like lean on it with your feet. You do want to stimulate with spikes actually, but
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
just, controlling how much weight you put on it.
Right. I'm over here talking about like stepping on knives, but yeah, fair enough.
Yes.
But no, that makes sense because whenever you said that whole little tool you use, my doctor does the same thing here for my feet. It will like, hey, do you feel that? I'm like, yeah, and it'll just poke everywhere else, and yeah, interesting. Damn, man, this has been enlightening. Like, I always do this stuff, and I always end up getting. I feel like I end up getting more than the actual audience does out of it, which that's fine. I'm spending the time. Whatever, accrued equity. But yeah, you really have kind of just once again, just an hour-long conversation just really made me think. And ideally other folks are getting something out of this too. And what I want them to do is, here's where you plug your stuff. Wink, wink. As everyone knows, I always put all the stuff in the description. I upload a day of. I sent out the audio video version, then just the audio version as well. So whatever tickles your fancy, go ahead. But plug away, man.
Yeah, so I would appreciate it. And, it's certainly, if you feel like you've tried everything and been around the houses, and I think that the rebuild your body from the ground up, and I have a little happy feet bonus in there as well. That's a lot of education, right? So I want you to understand the why behind what you're doing, not just like listen to me because I told you so, but understand that, maybe you've tried things and you felt like they didn't work or you weren't diligent. Oftentimes people are not diligent with the exercises they're given because they're not really making a big difference. When I get people in my clinic, it's test, retest. I want you to feel an immediate difference. And now you go and re-encourage your nervous system to integrate this into your body. So grab the program, and I could guarantee you that you'll feel a big difference in your strength, your mobility, and that's the way of getting out of pain. It's not this one fancy crack or pop that's going to fix everything. It's more about re-updating the software, re-updating the hardware so that you have a new body moving forward. And it's a little bit goes a long way. It's the way that compound interest, the same thing. If we put in a tiny 10-minute daily routine and that's intended to get parts moving in new ways, then your body will be very different in a couple of weeks or months from now.
And I once again can't remember the little tagline because I'm really bad today. I don't understand. I'm usually better at remembering things, but there was that whole like hair club for men thing. It's like, not only am I the owner, I'm a client kind of thing. Like, you are literally the testimonial for like
these are all the same things
where you think this stuff came from.
Exactly. And honestly, my body, fortunately, having gone through so many issues, like I feel great on a day-to-day basis. And I'm basically putting together what I know and explain it with long form content so that someone has like a longer form description. And then I've created also these follow along videos as well. So it's a very holistic package, very affordable, and would love for people to grab it and make some profound changes in their bodies and their whole lives.
Well, dude, that's awesome because pain sucks. And just having another tool to kind of combat it, or the tool, I should say. We discussed it a few times over. I mean, holistic or not holistic, but conventional medicine is, yes, it has its niche in life, but I think the way you have approached it, it's so much more logical than just throwing pills at it, throwing a splint at it, throwing whatever. Like, all right, well, work that sumbitch out. Let's move around a little bit. So, all right, buddy. Look, Greg, I appreciate you. You're a little international flavor. I just say that because you're Canadian. It's fine. But thank you so much for taking your time out here. I will throw all the description or all the plugs that we need to plug in there. I don't know if you just want me to put the website in there and just kind of have everyone just go from there, or whatever you want to do. Just let me know.
Yeah, but you got everything.
I appreciate you taking out the time, and really, I mean, not for nothing, making me think some things over. So
Great. Love it. Well, thanks a lot for having me, and hope to connect again.
All right, brother. I appreciate it, man. Good luck to you.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Thank you.